We ready? Okay, good evening. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right. We're back with the Truth Attack. So I got a lot of stuff I want to run through tonight. Let's just get right into this. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating and the broadcasts coming. So if you enjoy the information, the shows, the lectures, the informations, and the topics, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website. Get signed up as a monthly subscribing member and urge family, friends, neighbors, fellow workers to tune in and listen and get educated, because we're one of the few broadcast networks in the country delivering this information to you. The cold, hard truth, exposing the fraudulent nature of everything, including, specifically on this show, the federal income tax system as unconstitutionally enforced by the Internal Revenue Service, the Department of Justice, and the lower courts, the judges of the lower courts, who have become on this issue the enemy of the American people and the progenitors of straight-up communism right out of the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. So, LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com. Give us a hand, keep us working, keep the network operating, and if you want to get fully informed on the maladministration of the federal income tax by the IRS, the DOJ, and the federal judges, find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of the 75-page PDF download, The Simple Truth About Income Tax. That's my 5-star reviewed book, available on Amazon, but available as a PDF download for only $4 at the irszoom.com website. That price is only going to be around for a little bit longer. I'm going to have to raise it to $5 because of inflation and added costs. So, there you go. So, what do we have in the news? Well, I guess we're going to have to address the anti-Semitism now being tolerated, if not pursued, by the administration, and absolutely being pursued by the far left ultra-radical wing of the Democrat youth, who are again out in force playing their role as the Nazi brown shirts, causing as much chaos, anarchy, violence, disruption to society as possible, shouting down opposing speakers, threatening people from the opposite side, and supporting the new Nazis of the New World Order, the Islamic terrorists of Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, all those other persons working, admittedly working, to eliminate Israel from the river to the sea and to eliminate the Jews. This is the new Nazi rhetoric of today's world. And surprise, surprise, just like I told you 4 years ago, it's in the Democrat Party, not the Republicans, and not Donald Trump. Trump has taken the right position, support Israel. It's Hamas that initiated this by murdering over 1,400 Israelis in attack. And Gaza has been a Palestinian-run state for almost 20 years. Israel destroyed their settlements and walked out. The Palestinian population elected Hamas, who has stolen every single penny since, to wage literally an underground war under hospitals and under schools on Israel, with sporadic terrorist acts and violent assaults by missile, by mortar, by shell, by rocket, and on October 7th by an invasion of armed persons who slaughtered 1,400 Jewish and Americans, few Americans as well, and took hostages who Biden doesn't seem to give a rat's ass about, does he? It's only about, oh, we have to have a ceasefire so that Hamas can have humanitarian aid. You idiot. Everything you send there will be stolen and used to wage war, not to provide humanitarian aid. And of course, these protesters on the college campuses all over America aren't just yelling death to Israel, they're yelling death to America too, aren't they? Yeah, they are. They're yelling death to America too. And that just shouldn't be tolerated by the administration. They need to take the right side and stand up on the right side of history against what is, in the Middle East, genocide, not of the Palestinian people, but of the Israeli Jews. Israel has the right to eliminate the violent threat and the army of Hamas terrorists working from within Gaza who attacked Israel. This has got to stop once and for all. So Joe Biden was out with AOC, the socialist, to woo the far left student. He is completely buckled. He knows he's losing. He knows he's going to get wiped out in the next election. And now he's actually turned into a socialist, wooing communist support of the far left radical youth that he disavowed when he was running as a candidate and said he would represent everybody in America. But no, he's broken America apart, taken the side of the far extreme left. And not only is he trying to buy votes by supporting the Nazi rhetoric, he's buying the votes of these people with student loan forgiveness, even after the Supreme Court told him not to. Everything this man has done as policy has been crime. Crime on the border, crime in immigration, crime everywhere you look. Just crime, crime, crime. This is the criminal presidency, the criminal administration. They're breaking every law in the book, every border law, every immigration law. Absolutely unreal. Absolutely unreal. How this man got into office, I understand. It was a fraudulent election. They stuffed the post office. Typical Chicago politics. They stuffed the ballot box and just substituted the post office for the ballot box. Mailed out 10 million ballots under the COVID excuse, and then, we have to count every ballot. No, let's just count the legal ballots. Absolutely, absolutely. So he's forgiving the loans of the kids in these crowds yelling, "Death to America! Death to America!" Those are the people Joe Biden is giving your money to. And the whole Democratic Party, of course, is going just batshit crazy. I mean, literally, just crazy. James Carville is on TV raving about everything. They have to get going. They have to attack. They have to that. Nancy Pelosi is on MSNBC raving. Well, if you want to be a Trump supporter, an apologist, because somebody asked her about the fact that Trump's economy was better than Biden's, and some 65% of the people queried about it think so. But that upsets her. She can't deal with the truth because she's a denier of the truth, isn't she? She's an absolute, another one of those Democratic pathological serial liars, just like Joe Biden, just like Adam Schiff, just like Jamie Raskin, just like Chuck Schumer, just like, can you think of anyone leading the Democratic Party who hasn't exposed themselves in the last couple of years as a serial pathological liar? Karine Jean-Pierre, she's a serial pathological liar. Mayorkas, serial pathological liar. The other, Buttigieg, serial pathological liar. The other cabinet members, I'm not sure if they're smart enough to actually be liars. They just don't know their own business. Every time they come up to Capitol Hill to testify before a committee, They don't have any answers at all to the most basic questions, statistically speaking, about their institutions, agencies, or departments' role in whatever it is they're managing, whether it be from energy to prison reform. They know nothing. They're all incompetent, the entire administration. And that, of course, is why everything is falling apart. They see the future. They know Biden can't win this next election. And where is all this violence and chaos in the streets and on the universities? Because they've completely co-opted the universities now. They're canceling graduation ceremonies. They're canceling classes. They're moving everything online. They're letting the anarchists shut down the system. They're letting the anarchists shut down the system. And on most of these universities, I'll bet you dollars to donuts, the majority of the people protesting aren't students. They're professional agitators being paid by George Soros-supported finance groups to do exactly this kind of thing. Nazi brown shirt activity. Go out and stir up chaos, unrest, violence. Screw with the peaceable society so that people cry out for a different form of government, one that will work, instead of this one that isn't. This one isn't because the Democratic administrations aren't enforcing the law. They're letting the anarchy and chaos go on because half of the population in this country is trying to fundamentally transform America. Remember Obama's promise? Well, they still want to do it. They still want to fundamentally transform America into a socialist state so that they can join with Europe and China and the others and become a global socialist village. Oh, isn't that wonderful? And we see all the time another step being taken. The now proposing out of Europe a 2% tax on billionaires globally that would be paid into a fund in Europe and managed by some entity in Europe for the whole world. Oh, right. So Americans are now going to be ruled by a European Council with no law of America involved. And, this is just the kind of thing Joe Biden would buy into, being a complete constitutional idiot. It's just the kind of thing he'd buy into. And if you are a regular listener of the show, you know that that would be an unconstitutionally direct tax on the billionaires and their property. It would be completely unconstitutional for it to be administered by a foreign authority. It's totally unconstitutional for the U.S. government to try and levy that tax. And that, of course, is what they'd be after, wouldn't it? Because as soon as they got everybody on board with letting the foreign authority tax the billionaires, well, how far behind that would they be with the claim that they needed to tax the billionaires in America an additional 2%? Just socialist tyrants trying to become despots. And of course, right now, America is struggling. America is struggling. The mainstream media is ignoring the fact that 20 million people right now are having a hard time eating. Many people are working 2 jobs. More and more people every month are working 3 jobs to try and make ends meet. And other people, seniors, are having to go back to work because their Social Security check just doesn't quite make it anymore. So they need to work. They're afraid. Bidenomics are killing Main Street. Killing Main Street. And what does this idiot Biden say? He's going to let the Trump tax cuts expire, which means everybody in the country will pay at least 3% more tax. At the same time, he's promising to let the tax cuts expire, so you pay more tax. He's promising not to raise taxes on anyone making less than $200,000 a year. But that's impossible. The man is either a liar, a pathological liar, or he's that stupid. And of course, if you're paying attention, Jay Powell should have cut interest rates yesterday by 0.5 point. Main Street desperately needs the short-term rate to be below the long-term rate, and 0.5 point would have done it to start lending back on Main Street. The economy is not good. They're all fake numbers, and I've got more on that on the upcoming sessions here. The next 15 minutes, 30 minutes of the show. This is Thomas Fried on Liberty Works Radio Network. I'm pretty sure I hear that commercial break coming up. We'll be back in 5 minutes with more from the Liberty Works Radio Network. Come on over to the website and get signed up. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We're back from a commercial break, and let's see, what do we want to do here? Well, as I was saying when we broke for the break, the American economy isn't really doing that well. It's been fraudulently touted on the mainstream media for a while, and I've got an article that I want to read about this. I've been holding this for a while because the show just had too much other stuff that I wanted to get to first, but I've been holding this since February. It was written then, and it still rings perfectly true. It's an article from the Epoch Times by Jeffrey A. Tucker. Jeffrey A. Tucker is the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute and the author of many thousands of articles in the scholarly and popular press, as well as 10 books in 5 languages. Most recently, Liberty or Lockdown. He is also the editor of The Best of Mises. He writes a daily column on economics for the Epoch Times and speaks widely on the topics of economics, technology, social philosophy, and culture. So here's his article from the Epoch Times, February 14th. In the opinion pages, The Lie of the Strong Economy. There must be 1,000 plus articles in the mainstream media now telling us the same thing. They say that the economy is strong and wonderful with low inflation and low unemployment and high wages. And yet there is something weird going on. Irrationally, many people are unconvinced. For some strange reason, many people are still complaining. People are so dumb, right? That's the message. The masses are ignorant slobs, spoiled beyond measure, and cannot recognize a good thing when they see it. It just goes to prove that we need elites in charge because people are too dim to read the data and see the wonderful reality all around them. This message is being broadcast all day, every day, to everyone. You are an idiot for failing to recognize the glories of Bidenomics. The truth, of course, is the exact opposite. As bad as people think things are, the reality is worse. At issue is the economic data itself. To put a fine point on it, it's all lies, and it's getting worse. Every statistical release that comes from the government is manipulated these days. It's all explicitly designed to put lipstick on a pig or paint pretty pictures out of mud. This is easily discoverable by looking past the headlines. Sadly, Wall Street rarely does that. Traders buy and sell based on what they believe that others believe about the data at hand. And that leads to a real paradox. Everyone can know it is a lie, but still participate in it because doing so is good for the bottom line, at least for a little while. We only need to look at the preposterous jobs numbers this week. Every headline was crowing about the glorious jobs machine of the U.S. economy. So much job creation, and yet you only need a couple of clicks to see the following. Civilian labor force, December 2023, 167,451. 167,451,000. Civilian labor force, January 2024, 167,276,000. That's a fall of 175,000 jobs. The employed population has fallen, too. The number of people employed part-time is up by 211,000 people in 1 month. In short, people continue to lose full-time work and are replacing it with multiple part-time jobs. Nearly all of the jobs allegedly created last year came from the conversion of full-time work to part-time. How in the world does the federal government cover this up? There are 2 sources of numbers. One is the establishment survey that calls businesses and asks if they pick up the phone or answer the survey, which fewer and fewer do, they tell the agency. But that leads to the problem of double counting, obviously. But doing so yields higher numbers, which the Biden administration likes. The other survey is vastly more reliable. The government queries households to see who is working. Here is where we see that labor markets are flat and non-performing, revealing of increasingly desperate conditions on Main Street in America. As for the unemployment numbers, they become useless with low labor participation numbers. When people drop out, they are not included. So the official data only records whether those actively looking for work can find it. Obviously they can, but that says nothing about living standards or the well-being of the working population. At this point, it is a meaningless number. So, of course, the Biden administration and big media are all over it. I would point out here as an aside that the employment participation number is down at around 62.5% right now. So you got 37.5 to 38% of the population not even trying to participate in the employment numbers. And that's as low as it's been since the late 1970s, 50 years. So, the same is true of the inflation numbers as measured by the Consumer Price Index, which is something I've told you before as well. With official data, prices today are overall up by 20% since 2020. The problem? Absolutely no one believes this. It's ridiculous. Nearly everything you buy is up by 30% to 50% or even 100%. Everyone knows this. So how does the CPI manage this trick? It's all in the details of the formula, of course. For example, as the great inflation took off in 2021, we read that health insurance premiums fell dramatically and continued to fall. What in the world? You read that right. The cost of health care has not tracked the overall CPI at all. Do you have a sense that your health insurance premiums are down? No way. As it turns out, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has retroactively changed the way that it calculates changes in health insurance premiums and then fixed the data backwards. Of course, to rig the statistic, to bake it. Instead of just calculating what people pay, they started calculating revenue to companies against the amount of benefits consumed, and then assessing how much is because of price increases through a modeling exercise. Yeah, modeling. You mean a data transformation exercise. The idea was to treat medical services like fees at a restaurant. You spent more there this month than last month because you ate there more. It's not inflation, that's more consumption. But there's a problem with this analogy. Health insurance is paid regardless of consumption. Yes, this is complicated by many factors involving copays and deductibles and so on, but the bottom line is that you pay whether you consume or not. It makes no sense to measure consumption against premiums because the premiums are paid regardless of the level of consumption. But by rejiggering the formula, the price measurers could pull a fast one. When people started consuming medical resources again in 2021, that would make the final price go dramatically down since people were not going to the doctor or hospital in 2020 in a pandemic. Make sense of that. Why would the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, make such a change? It seems more than obvious why. This was an inconspicuous way to drive down the CPI generally, to make it appear like there was a lower cost of living when there wasn't. A baked statistic, just like I've been telling you for 4 years. Okay, mix in dramatically falling prices with rising prices, and you get a flatter rate of increase. Under official data, health insurance premiums dropped by 37% between 2022 and 2023. Right. If you believe that, I've got land in a Louisiana swamp that I want you to take a look at. You can stop laughing now. That's only one example that we know about. There are probably many more such manipulations in the data. Then we have GDP data, which is nothing but a giant mess of statistical malfeasance. It is supposed to measure national output, but it includes all government spending as output, which is laughable because the truth is the opposite. You could implement full-scale socialism under this rule and generate wild increases in GDP while destroying entirely the economy. That's not a reduction ad absurdum, reductio ad absurdum. It's in fact what is happening now as government at all levels gobbles up ever more of the productive capacity of the people in the private sector. This is declared as economic growth. And I've said before that what they're doing here is spending $1.50 of debt to buy $1 worth of gross domestic product, GDP. They're spending $1.50 to buy $1. That's how perverted and subversive and seditious this administration is. So, this is declared as economic growth. Did you ever wonder how it seemed like the Soviet economy was growing so much between 1950 and 1980, even though it was clear from the looks of it that the entire country was growing ever poorer and falling into despair? Well, this is how it was done. The same tricks are being used by the United States today. There is no honest data available anymore, sorry to say. The closest is the Census Bureau's annual look at real income, but even that is affected by CPI fakery. The truth is much more grim indeed. It's a common observation that we live in times of lost trust. I'm telling you that people have not lost nearly enough trust. There is still an assumption around that you can rely upon government economic statistics. That is simply not true. Like turtles, the fakery goes all the way down. The reason the public is generally depressed about economic conditions is not because people are stupid. It's because they live in the real world rather than the illusory and fantasy world created by Biden-captured agencies that purport to report altered data that inform us about what's going on and what's happening to you. And of course, it's not informing you, it's deceiving you. The public has a deep intuition that something is not right, and they are the ones who are right. Okay, that's by Jeffrey A. Tucker. It was in the Epoch Times in the opinion section. And of course, he's absolutely right. I've been telling you for years the data from the CPI and the government generated statistics is fake. The inflation rate is not down around, or it isn't peak out at 19%. It's run right through that. Everybody knows that, as the article points out. And right now, it's not monetary policy that is the real problem. The reason why inflation has been so sticky and why prices can't come back down a little bit, even as inflationary trends ease a little bit, which they're coming back again as oil goes up again, it's because of the energy policies. You can't fix inflation appearance of problem, which isn't really monetary policy. It's caused by the artificial increase of energy at every step of the production and sales process of every good in America. When you tack on extra costs at every step of the production and distribution and sales system, the prices go up and they can't come down until that intentionally imposed additional cost is removed from the equation at every step of the process. So because those energy costs are stuck because of Biden's anti-energy policy in America, specifically anti-carbon, shutting down the pipeline, stopping the leases and the permits. Okay, we'll be back in 5. We overran there a bit. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is a Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into this. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. God is the truth, and freedom comes from God, not government. And God's true plan for mankind is freedom, achieved and accomplished through faith in God. And if you misplace your faith in any other entity, man, being, institution, or philosophy, instead of in God, your faith will be used against you to betray you and enslave you. It will result in your enslavement to whatever entity you have misplaced your faith. And that, my friends, is the history of government of man. That is the history. A misplaced faith in men and government and institutions or philosophy in place of God, and every single time it has resulted in the enslavement of the population who did not put their faith in God, but put it in some other thing. So, God's true plan for mankind is freedom. And keep in mind, as goes the currency, so goes the fate of the nation. If you run it out and print it into oblivion, so too will your future be one of oblivion. Okay, this just in from Holly. You know, how do you get through to these kids? It's just they've been indoctrinated and brainwashed with nonsense from the socialist professors and teachers who haven't taught them any real facts or history or knowledge. They've simply taught them what to think, not how to think. And without the ability to apply critical thinking to accomplish self-determination, you will be misled with all the lemmings off the cliffs into the hell of oblivion on the rocks below. So why don't we just get into this? A young woman was about to finish her first year of college. Like so many others her age now, she considered herself to be a very progressive liberal Democrat. And among other liberal ideas she supported, she was very much in favor of higher taxes on the wealthy in order to support more government programs for the poor. In other words, she was all for the redistribution of wealth and socialism. And she was rather ashamed that her father was, on the contrary, a staunch conservative, a position she openly expressed and argued as wrong. Based on the lectures that she had heard and participated in at college, and the conversations that she had had with her professors and other students, she felt that her father had for years harbored an evil, selfish desire to keep what he thought should be his. One day, she was challenging her father on his opposition to higher taxes on the rich, while espousing the need for more government programs for the poor. The self-professed objectivity she heard proclaimed by her professors, she said, had to be the truth, as she indignantly argued with her father. He responded by asking how she was doing in school. Taken aback at the sudden change of subject, she answered rather proudly that she had had a 4.0 GPA and let him know that it was tough to maintain, insisting that she was taking a very difficult course load and was constantly studying difficult subject matter, which left her no time to go out and party like other friends she had and knew at college. She didn't even have time for a boyfriend, she said, and didn't really even have that many college friends because she spent all her time studying at the library to maintain the GPA. Her father listened and then asked, "And how is your high school friend Audrey doing?" She replied, "Audrey is barely getting by at all. All she takes are easy classes. She never studies and she barely has a 2.0 GPA. But she is very popular on campus. College for her is a nonstop party and a blast. She's invited every weekend to all the parties, and on many days she doesn't show up for her classes because she can't make it, because she's too hungover from partying the night before. Her father then asked his daughter, "So why don't you help her out and go to the college dean's office and ask him or her to deduct 1.0 points off of your GPA and give them to your friend Audrey, who only has a 2.0 and obviously needs help with her grades. That way you will both have a 3.0 GPA. The outcome will be equal, and wouldn't that certainly be a fair and equitable distribution of the GPA assets amongst all parties?" The daughter, visibly shocked by her father's suggestion, angrily fired back, "That's a crazy idea. How would that be fair? I've worked really hard for my grades. I've studied and invested a lot of time and a lot of hard work in getting my grades and maintaining the GPA grade average. Audrey has done nothing, next to nothing, toward her degree. She drank, played, and partied while I worked my tail off." The father slowly smiled, winked, and said gently to her, "You mean like the fable of the grasshopper and the ant? Welcome to the conservative side of the fence. And winter. Do you understand the problem now? With your professor's blind equity to accomplish equal outcomes for everyone, while using taxation of others to fund it? I hope you do, honey. It turns out perspective can be enlightening. If you ever wondered what side of the fence you sit on, here's a good little test. If a conservative doesn't like guns, he doesn't buy one. If a liberal doesn't like guns, he wants all guns outlawed. If a conservative is a vegetarian, he doesn't eat meat. If a liberal is a vegetarian, he wants all meat banned from sale. If a conservative is down and out, he thinks about how to better his situation. A liberal wonders and then demands who is going to take care of him. If a conservative doesn't like a talk show host, he changes channels. Liberals demand that those they don't like be canceled and taken off the air immediately. If a conservative is a non-believer, he doesn't go to church. If a liberal is a non-believer, he wants all and any mention of God and Jesus silenced and removed from the public forum. If a conservative decides he needs health care, he goes about shopping for it, or may choose a job that provides it. A liberal demands the rest of us pay for his needs. If a conservative thinks gas is too expensive or too dirty, he may choose to buy a hybrid or an EV. Liberals want the production of petroleum engines terminated, so there's no choice for you to make, because it's already been decided for you by policy. If a conservative reads this, he'll post it. A liberal will delete it because he's offended. What will you do? In the liberal utopia, government policy controls everything. But that's not really utopia. That's hell. That is hell, where everything about your world and your life is controlled by others. That is hell. Okay, so where are we? We got 5 minutes left in the show. What do you want to talk about for 5 minutes? Let's go back to the local news and talk a little bit about, oh yeah, here we go. So, Joe Biden in this administration, the crisis administration. Let's go all the things, through some of the things, as many as I could jot down on a small little notepad piece of paper here. All of the crises that the Biden administration has fomented in just a short 3.5 years of administration. They've given us a crime crisis. Of course, with crime occurring every day on the border and crime now beginning to run rampant in all the Democratic-run cities in the country. You have assault, you have robbery, and these crimes, of course, the Biden says the statistics show they're going down. You know why they're going down? Because nobody's even bothering to report them anymore because the police don't come. What's going up, however, is handgun purchases and ownership as America arms itself to defend itself from the crime that the Democrats are fomenting in order to enact and run through Saul Alinsky's rule for radicals, which calls for creating as much chaos, anarchy, and violence and disruption of all elements and operations in society in order to foment a discussion about a new form of government, which the radicals know won't be tolerated by the general population until the current form of government is absolutely dysfunctional and isn't serving anyone. It's only then that the population will tolerate even a conversation about a new government. So they have to destroy everything and bring everything down intentionally. And that's the role of the brown shirts, the radical youth that goes out and violently disrupts society. And that's what's happening on the college campuses. That's what happened with Black Lives Matter. This is the Democrats' plan to disrupt and violate the law until the system collapses from the running out of the currency. So you got a crime crisis, you got a fentanyl crisis, you have a border crisis, you have an immigration crisis, you have inflation crisis of every sort, a food cost pricing crisis, a fuel crisis, a rent crisis, an energy crisis, a gasoline, diesel, oil cost crisis, a general product pricing cost crisis. In foreign affairs, you've got crisis in Afghanistan still, where the caliphate state is being reestablished through the $91 billion in arms and weapons munitions Biden left behind for them to sell. You have a Ukraine crisis, a Russia crisis, a Gaza crisis, an Israel crisis, a Palestinian crisis, a Houthi crisis, a Hezbollah crisis, an Iranian crisis. Oh, let's not forget, I did mention Russia, didn't I? Okay, how about the China crisis? How about the crisis in the banks and at the Fed, where the Main Street banks are starting to fail from the debt loads, the inability to sell the zeros they stocked up on, and the coming debt write-offs in the commercial real estate office building market. They're under a lot of stress. It's going to go bad if they can't start writing loans with the disinversion of the yield curve. Got to bring short-term rates down below long-term rates, which, as I said earlier, is why Jay Powell, chairman of the Fed, should have lowered rates a half a point yesterday to fix Main Street. Sure, the stock market would have taken off, but it'll correct itself ultimately when the economic reality on Main Street hits home. But in the meantime, Main Street needs a break. It can't catch a loan. You got a crisis in senility and dementia at the White House. You got a crisis of student loans. You got a crisis at foreign embassies, 11 of which have closed under this administration. You have a corruption crisis at all-time levels. You have a lawfare, a DOJ weaponized, an FBI weaponized, a CIA weaponized crisis, where they're not arresting and attacking and targeting criminals, but political opposition instead of criminals. Targeting parents, targeting Catholics, targeting Trump supporters, targeting the word MAGA, targeting patriot. This is the criminal administration. And of course, we have a crisis in mental illness. Half of the country has gone mentally ill with Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. And according to the Democrats, we have a crisis at the Supreme Court and a crisis in abortion. So this is the crisis administration. It's been nothing but divide, 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 and attack political opposition. And they're absolutely interfering in the election with what they're doing to Donald Trump. I guess I'm going to try and talk a little bit about that next week, because I'm pretty sure we're coming up here on the end of the show. So again, I want to urge everyone to find their way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website. Get signed up as a subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. Every membership helps, and we need your support to keep the network operating. And find your way over to IRSZoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax for $4 and get informed.